we see a problem and we see, okay, we can solve this. At some point in time, it seems manageable, and then there comes a day when it's like, okay, it's a beast. Now that we are exploring it.
Yeah, of course, plenty of times. Plenty of times. To be frank,
When did that moment come?
when we tested in the local for, especially the computer vision model for this object detection was working perfectly fine for 6 hours, 7 hours. But in production, in order to trigger the model that we have, so we were supposed to wait for 5 minutes. The scalability was moving from 5 users to 500,000 users.
Wow.
AI actually increase the complications when you are not using in the right way, but it solves the problem if you use it in the right way. Create the guardrails in the way that you need, then you don't have to manage the governance at all.
In your opinion, what are the teams that have seen success with AI and the teams that are struggling with it? What do you think is a differentiating factor? Thank you so much for joining in, Deepak. I really appreciate it. I know you've traveled quite far as compared when we keep Bangalore traffic in mind. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming in.
You're most welcome, and I really think this is my opportunity for me to go to the world and talk about how exactly the AI is needed for the industry.
Absolutely, 100%. So, in this discussion, what we really want our viewers to get out is like how AI is being used in production, and the idea is that there are a lot of companies that are trying to dabble with AI, right? But there are experimentations, there are tests, and there are pilots. But going to production is a different beast, and applying it, right? So you've been one of those people who led a huge team, and might I say, like, successfully at that one. So we'll go into that journey. But first, help me understand a bit about you and your company and what you're doing and vision.
Yeah, my name is Deepak. I'm working as Vice President for ExamRoom.AI. So ExamRoom.AI has a mindset of production first, where we will be architecting the solution not only for the experimentation or the POC purpose, it has to be for the production grade. Because at production, scaling and looking at or solving the problem is kind of a different beast, but it works perfectly fine when you are working on the local machine or the local environment that you have. So with umpteen number of experimentation that we have done, so we have already built reusable architecture, so that so we can use it for 60 to 70% of the time, and the remaining 30% would be based on the problem that we are trying to solve. That is how it solves the AI at the production.
Got it. So, like, at a core, like exam room, right? What is the company vision right now, and like, who is your end user? What are they trying to achieve, and how are you helping them achieve that?
Yeah. Basically, ExamRoom.AI is all about providing platform to assessment industry. Basically, our customers are going to be like universities, bodies, or it could be some of the credential bodies who would like to get their candidates certified in digital platform. So right from the beginning of writing the items, so we call questions as item here, and making it available for the candidates to take the examination. This is what the item journey is, and then we have the candidate journey who would like to take the exams. So we provide platform for them to get registered and schedule for offline or online examination, and then take the exams, and they will also be getting certification based on pass or fail then and there itself. So for this we have diversified solution. If you have offline examination, we have paper pencil based tests, so where you need to fill the bubbles, basically brick and mortars a kind of examination. And for that we have a different AI solution which automatically detects that and produces the result within a fraction of second. With, of course, it is going to be with combination of computer vision and LLMs that we are trying to use now. And then for the online examination, you don't have to do anything. It is all about matching with the right answers and producing the result right after you click on the end of the examination.
Wow. So, I've given fair number of exams growing up, and I used to always wonder how that works out. Computer vision and AI sounds like a perfect combination, right? So, like, you talked about computer vision and AI, and but uh, when let's go behind the scenes, right? Now, for any student that's giving an exam, this feels like a very seamless experience, right? You click on the bubbles and you submit and you get the answer. But in the behind the scenes of it is like a lot of things rolling in. So like, how would you describe how complicated it is, and like, where does AI come in to solve that complication, or does it increase the complication?
AI actually increase the complications when you are not using in the right way, but it solves the problem if you use it in the right way. And I believe when you are working on the architecture, it if it does not produce the errors in the way that your dev team can go and solve then and there itself, rather than spending time on identifying what exactly the issue, I feel that architecture is incomplete. So, and that would give you a chance to optimize your architecture. And when it comes to the candidate journey, it is all about the entering some details from the candidate and click on next, 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 and schedule for the examination by making some payment. Of course, it is going to be depending on the organization that they are representing. But when it comes to AI, it is all about the scalability and the observability that we are looking for, and also the governance system. Because uh, I heard a lot of people talking about governance, where AI is incapable of handling the governance. But try it. You need to use it in the right way. Governance will automatically come into picture, and you need to uh, you know create the guardrails in the way that you need. Then you don't have to manage the governance at all.
Right. So that's a very good point that you mentioned, because right now a lot of companies are actually going through this problem that they will have a lot of users who will use AI, and then they run into two problems. Either they are not able to manage how AI is being used, or they don't have any sort of understanding of what is it being used for and how much is it going to cost them, right? So when you think about your core AI users, who are they, and how does having observability and governance help you in making the right decisions?
Yes. So let's say there is a guy took the examination and whose results are not populated. Of course, we can have provide information to that person stating your result will be available in next 2 hours or 4 hours. But we know from behind the scene why it is not produced. So if it is not produced, I should be getting in a notification mechanism to one of the admin who is managing the application, right? So but when it comes to the application layer, that notification through the AI system, because AI couldn't identify for some reason it couldn't identify the bubbles, or it couldn't identify the pattern of the uh, you know uh, pattern of the candidate who entered into the examination, so on and so forth. So that differentiation between, is it a pattern based, or is it going to be something like it did not read the bubbles, that kind of a notification which go to the admin, and admin will directly reach out to the dev team of the AI who is managing, and that guy will get to know what exactly the issue behind it, right? So it is all going to be the combination of, again, computer vision and the LLM system that we are using.
So, you mentioned that you started in 2021. I would love to start how the early journey looked like, and then at what point or how did you start using AI or involving AI in your phases from 2021 to today. So let's just go back time and just like would love to understand that story from your perspective.
Yeah, back then there was no system which can automatically evaluate by itself. Right now, luckily, we have them, right? Back then, so it was all about the manual intervention where somebody has to go and look into the logs and try to identify what exactly they happening. But when it comes to today, So even before you get intervene, whatever the result which got produced, it can automatically read by the system, especially for the complicated result which comes out, right? Sometimes human spend more time to understand, but the system that we have now, it can give you what exactly, or it can summarize the complication within a minute or two, and then you will be able to take action upon it, right? Of course you will have to confirm whether it is legitimate or not, but so that is the only thing that you have to do. You don't need to get into debug, and you don't have to print out all the logs that you have. You don't have to go back to the time and identify those logs in order to correct them, because everything is just right in front of you. You just need to read it and take an action.
Got it. Perfect. Uh, I want to go a little deeper and ask some like very painstaking questions. So like, I'm sure every company goes through this phase. We see a problem and we see, okay, we can solve this. At some point in time, it seems manageable, and then there comes a day when it's like, okay, it's a beast. Now that we are exploring it, help me understand from your perspective, when did that moment come?
Yeah, so I think back in 2021, we have come up with a model in order to identify the object, or we can call it as object detection. Right. Then we had you only look once YOLO model, and we also have something called RCNN in order to identify those things, right? Everything was fine. We got it deployed in our local server, and we tested it for 4 long hours, 5 long hours, because some of the examination that we conduct in ExamRoom.AI would vary from 1 hour to somewhere around 28 hours examination as well. Of course, there will be a break.
Breaks about 28 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
Which exam is that?
We'll come to that part. Okay. But when we tested in the local for, especially the computer vision model for this object detection was working perfectly fine for 6 hours, 7 hours. But when we deployed this in production, the latency part came into picture, right? Uh, so I think we did mistaken, or what we did is we got anxious with the early success that we got on the local machine, but in production how it works can be, right? And even in order to trigger the model that we have, so we were supposed to wait for 5 minutes. That's the worst situation that we had. And then it was not able to identify the tiny object, which is very important for us to keep the integrity in the examination. That we couldn't achieve, and that was the biggest mistake or the failure that we faced in 2021.
So, like building on to that, right? This is an important learning for a lot of people who would be viewing. How did you go about solving it? What all did you do? And how did you kind of make sure that, okay, if a problem like this comes up, how are we ready to deal with it? What may come next?
Okay, so what I did was first I went through the architecture part of the YOLO system that we were using. That is one, and then how we architected our right from start to end of that journey. So I found 4 major problems. One is the architecture failure, because it was not producing the result where we can take action upon in quickly basis. The second one was we were not having any scalable system there. We were just using like hard coded computes. So we were not able to make it auto scaling, so on and so forth. And we were having something in our mind that these are the set of the users and vary plus or minus 10, but that was not case in the production, right? As on when it increases, it is going to boost up the memory and the compute of the system. So by identifying these problems, we got to know where exactly the actions to be taken on, and then we got to know these are the solution which can be applied. And before we come to that conclusion, we went to a phase where we assumed ourselves that there is no solution in the market for this. Right. So we went into that position as well. Right. Of course, these are very common, but then when you look in keenly, and then you will be able to understand through the architecture itself, then you will be able to solve the problem.
Got it. Perfect. That's amazing. Because your rich background in engineering also kind of helps with that, no? Perfect. So I would love to talk about how do you manage your deployments today, and how do you manage your AI stack today? You talked about governance and observability, so I'm pretty sure you must have built something around that. How are you going about that?
Let us go back a little bit and try to understand how we used to deploy and then how we deploy now.
Perfect.
So, what we are into some cloud stack. So there we go and we have certain option, but you need to look from the cost perspective also, because cost in production can erode if you are not using the right services in the right way, right? So in order to deploy anything, we were taking almost like 5 to 6 days. Then though you use Kubernetes cluster, though you use manage Kubernetes clusters, and then you add auto scaling on top of it, it was like one hell of the activity for us. And in fact, we had 3 resources who dedicatedly working only for MLOps then. But now we don't need to work on that because we shifted to True Foundry. So just you need to push the containers. So it automatically takes care of spinning up all the servers with minimum clicks that you have to do, where you will be able to manage compute, you will be able to manage cost, you will be able to see all of them pictorically or the visualization. And lately True Foundry has introduced gateway as well, where we can solve the observability and the governance part as well. So that's shifted from 6 days to less than 2 hours for us.
Oh wow, that's amazing. 6 days to 2 hours. That speaks a lot about, like, I guess, like a lot of cost save efficiency. Talk to me more about how reliability and stability have changed from time back then to time today, and how do you see it?
So, as I mentioned earlier, understanding the problem itself was the problem for us earlier. Now, you don't have to, you just need to go to the logs, and you can categorize the logs that you have. You apply the filter, you will get to know what exactly the problem is. Thanks to True Foundry, which produces and gives you what exactly the action that you have to take on top of it, right? So that would reduce, let's say you are working on a production now and you're right in front of the machine, and you have a notification system, you got a notification, you need to take action on top of it, you go to that notification, and then the problem is, and when you know the problem, you can solve it in quick succession. That's the platform engineering that.
Absolutely, you cannot solve a problem without knowing the problem. That's very, very well said. Um, Perfect. So, when we are internally discussing a project, right? I'm just speaking from corporate experience, right? We project, we overestimate, we underestimate things, right? From your perspective, when AI was coming, right? Did you ever feel that, okay, we underestimated this about AI, now that we have started using it in production?
Yeah, of course, plenty of times. Plenty of time, to be frank. Some may say we haven't experienced such, but we did. uh, I think I have already mentioned, so we were fascinated about the early success in the local machine. Right. But when we get into the production, that is where your nerves will completely down. And those experiences are literally you need, because that is how you improve your system, and that is where you get an opportunity to work on your mistakes. So that is how I take it. But don't get fascinated or too much happy about the early success that you get. But if you are getting that success in production, of course I'm more happy for you, but keep monitoring them.
Right. Perfect. So, help me understand this. From your standpoint today, if you were to, let's say, give advice to people, first let's talk about the deployment part, right? what would you say to those teams who are, let's say, in the same journey that you are in? What would you say that if you were on my path, this is what I will recommend you to do from day one and avoid these mistakes?
So mistakes are bound to the problem statement that you are trying to solve. But as I said, you can standardize the delivery pattern that you require. So if you are working for a certain industry, 60 to 70% of the problem can be solved by standardizing the delivery which is necessary for you. Start working on that piece first, and that would give you a lot of lesson, and that would also try to solve a lot of problem for you. So when I say 60 to 70%, it is not a small, so it is the big time, right? If you're working for a project of 6 months, and 60 to 70% is more than like 4 months, right? So it is already reducing 4 months for you. You just need to spend 2 months on it so that you can produce or come up with the right result. And do not productionize any of the product or the services that you are releasing without having observability, CI/CD, and governance system.
Got it. So let's touch base upon that, right? We'll do one thing. First, help us understand the scale at which you are operating, like the scale of data that you have to manage, and then help me understand like how important it is at your scale to have good governance, observability, and like on day to day, how is it changing lives of engineers working on it?
Yeah, the scalability was moving from 5 users to 500,000 users.
Wow.
Right? So when I say 5 users, it is all about the local machine. Some developers are testing on it.
Correct.
And then when you deploy it and when it actually go to the production, so you will expect somewhere around 500,000 users, because so though minimum number of users are taking the examination at a given time, but the services that we need to think through, right? So how many services are spinning up, and how many services are getting triggered in order to produce the result out of it, right? It is not about the one solution. It is all about we have 60 plus solution as part of EI. So if you trigger 60 plus, one user is having 60 plus solution. Think about 200 users given a time, right? Or 1000 users given a time. So it is increasing exponentially. This is when your observability matters, right? So you need to track what exactly happening with given an individual or given a set of users. And then so you will be creating system fallback opportunities, right? So instead of using 3 solution at a time, you will be switching to 2 solution because something problem with that. So how do we manage those things without altering the production system? That is how we call it as microservice architecture, where you will be individually working on each services. So even though one service is down, you will be able to take action upon that, but your overall services are not going to down, right? Yeah. So that's how you need to think. And governance, because data is all about keeping them in secured environment. So in production, we have a lot of mechanism to keep the data secure or encrypted. So we can use them. That is what important. But when you are conducting the examination, keeping the integrity of the candidate who are taking the examination and candidate who taking the examination by clicking next to the items, because items are asset for us. What if an item go to the web, right? So that would lose the entire integrity on that examination just because of one candidate or two candidates. It would affect the whole university, or it could affect the whole credential body itself. So it is very important for us to keep those things. That is why we are using a lot of encryption. And of course, that is not sufficient. You need to start defining the guardrails which are necessary for you.
So talk more about guardrails. You mentioned it 2-3 times. I think some people do understand it, some people don't. So like from your standpoint, when you say guardrails, what does it mean in your context, and how do you apply them in your use case?
So let's say let us get into one solution, right? So let's say you have built a chatbot which uses the intelligent solution with no human intervention required, and you are providing support technically and also providing a support functionally to the end users of your application, right? Let's say there is a candidate who got registered for the examination and he made a payment, but that payment he did not get any confirmation. So what he has to do, he has to contact our customer support or the technical support that we have. When we get into that phase, so he will be asking only the questions related to the payment that he has done. But what if he start asking about the politicals? What if he is start asking about the questions, the favorite foods he like, right? So that is where the guardrail will come into picture. So guardrail is something you will be providing response to the related questions for that candidate. So you will not be answering any questions related to politics. You will not be answering any questions related to the foods that candidate likes. Rather, you will be providing solution for the problem which the candidate faced while getting registered or while making the payment in there.
Even though like these are LLM models and people can send whatever prompt, they you would control that, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So, we've come across a lot of teams, right? And there are a lot of people who are trying to use AI. In your opinion, what are the teams that have seen success with AI, and the teams that are struggling with it? What do you think is a differentiating factor?
I think this is a kind of interesting question, and I get these kind of question all the time, all the time. And so whenever you are designing a system, just keep something in your mind. The solution that you are coming up with, is it trying to solve the business problem by defining some of the KPIs associated, right? So whether it is saving the time or whether it is saving the cost. So that is the business impact which is necessary for to run the organization. That is the first cut. And then design the architecture in such a way that it should be reusable, right? By defining accelerators, by defining the orchestration template, by defining the automatic evaluation pipeline, by defining the governance system. The only piece that you left is to change the data that you need and governance based on the data that it has, right? So that is the most important part. And when it comes to scale, I have seen, I think I'm questioning, I got few of question, especially do I need to go with a fine tuning or do I need to go with the RAGs based system that we have? It is all about your use case, right? So if you ask me what should I use, I will be standardizing RAG architecture because it would be keeping my memory, and defining your guardrails would become very easy for you because it is working on top of your knowledge base, right? And fine tuning is something where you know you will require domain specific terminologies, and you will require some kind of a standardized output. Then you will be able to use the uh, fine tuned services. But I would say when it goes to the production, I would always use the hybrid solution, combination of RAG and fine tuning, because somebody has to evaluate the answers produced by one system, right? Yeah. So that cannot be a human, because if you look at the tokens, it is not about few hundreds, it is all about few thousands, yes, right? And it is impossible for you to track. So you will build the system so that you can evaluate, it can evaluate by itself, and then if it fails, of course you are there, you will be able to evaluate by itself.
Perfect. That's really helpful, Deepak. Thank you so much. It was great.